So I need to share with you something. I found this Friday night. I woke up about 6 months ago out of a deep sleep and immediately just said, and God has been speaking to me a lot. So I need you to understand this a lot, and telling me things and asking me questions and helping me get my memory back. I lost a lot of my memories. Apparently, there was a lot of really, really bad things that happened to me in my childhood that I just let go of, and so that I could function on a daily basis. And so Friday night, I was looking for a birth certificate for my son, and I came across some paperwork. It was a marriage license for my grandmother who married this man, Asa West. He was 25. It said she was 18, but I knew she wasn't 18 when she got married. She was actually 14. And so it's her marriage license. So they lied about that, right? I mean, lie about everything else. Might as well lie about a marriage license. And then she was 14, he was 25. And then it had her last will and testament. And it had birth dates of every one of her children and when they were all born. And she was actually pregnant at the time that this happened. And she had a baby in December of 1928. I think it was her first child. My daddy's brother. And so anyway, there was a murder case 29 years ago, or actually, excuse me, it was longer than that. It was 1991 that happened in Horry County. And for those of you that may not know the details, it was considered to be the most gruesome case ever. Well, that's the one we knew about information. Like Pee Wee Gaskins, gruesome case. Killed 140 people in South Carolina. You know, we have the Bigums that, the last of the Bigum, he killed 5 of his family members to cover up a murder that he committed because somebody was going to tell on him. So there was a case done in 1991. It was a gruesome case. And as I'm researching and have been researching Freemasonry, to those of you that don't know that, I have heavily been studying that. And because my family members were heavily involved in Freemasonry, my mother's father was a 33rd degree Mason. My great grandfather, 33rd degree Mason. Great grandfather, 33rd degree Mason. I had to go through renunciation prayers of Masonry, and because my family opened that door to let Satan in, and not only to themselves but also to my bloodline, and that is one of those generational curses that last at least 4 generations, and it stops with me. It stopped with me. So I had to go through these prayers, and as I went through these prayers, some of the curses, if you tell the truth about Freemasonry and what is done there, then one of the curses in the very first degree, you do what's called a penal code, and it says that they will cut you from ear to ear, take your tongue, throw it into the ocean, and watch the tide go over it twice a day. That's the first degree. Okay, so if you have family members who are involved in Freemasonry, that's the first degree. The third degree, they bring themselves back from the dead. I mean, not like actually bring themselves back from the dead, but they inhibit it as if they have rebirthed. So they wrap you as a mummy, throw you on the floor, then someone picks you back up in reverence of you being brought back from the dead. And so they don't have the same God that we do. Let's just say that. They worship a totally different God called the Great Architect of the Universe, okay? And there are things that they do in these rituals, and some of them don't know what they're doing, but they do them anyway, and there's curses that go along with it, not only for themselves, but for their family. But one of the rituals, you literally say that if I tell the truth, that I will be cut from ear to ear with my tongue taken out. Okay, there's another one of the sayings that they do, and I believe it's in the 4th or the 5th degree. I'd have to go back and look. I was trying to look that up this morning. 5th, I think it's in the 5th. But that they cut you open, and your stomach open, and they allow your innards to be exposed, and the beast to eat you. Okay? Why am I telling you this? It's very important for this case that I'm about to share with you. And I found this paperwork of my grandparents, and I had no clue I had it. I've had it for at least 25 years. I don't know who wrote it, but I will tell you that my parents took me to the murder trial every day, and I remember many, many details that were spoken in this murder trial. I was only 10. Yes, I understand that, but I also do have a photographic memory. So I just want to start reading it to you. And it says, Ken Register tried and convicted of a crime he didn't commit. Now, this kid is up for parole. He's not a kid anymore. He's 46 or 47 years old. He's up for parole next month for the first time ever on February the 9th. And he did not commit this crime. I knew he didn't commit this crime 29 years ago when we were in court. But I need you to understand these details, and the reason why I'm sharing this with you is because of the corruption. I need you to understand how many people it takes to be involved in the corruption, and especially the corruption that's happening in our country. This is the exact same thing. This was the first ever DNA case in the state of South Carolina. So I'll get started. On Saturday, November 16th, 1991, Ken and Angela were seen at a local go-kart track by many people. And I was at that go-kart track, and I saw Ken and Angela that night, including a church group that didn't arrive at the track until approximately 11:15. This go-kart track was located approximately 6 miles outside of Aner, South Carolina, and Ken and Angela went to his car around 11:37. They sat in the car for a few minutes, and then Ken left Angela and drove to his home outside of Conway. His arrival at home around 12:15 a.m. was heard and confirmed by 2 different neighbors. Now, that's from 11:37 to 12:15. He had 33 minutes. Okay, so keep that in mind, 33 minutes. That same night at 1:13 a.m., Bonnie Todd, who was Crystal Faye Todd's mother, telephoned and asked Ken if he had seen her daughter, Crystal, a 17-year-old high school senior. Register and Crystal Todd were friends and had even dated twice back in 1988. But Register had helped Bonnie Todd locate her daughter on at least one other occasion after she failed to return home. On that night, Crystal was located in the woods following a party she had attended. Register told Bonnie Todd that he had not seen Crystal but offered to check the 2 area hospitals. According to the telephone company record, Register contacted the hospitals at 1:32 a.m., called Bonnie Todd. After letting her know that Crystal was not at either hospital, Register went to bed. The next morning, on his way to church, Register saw a police car at the Todd home and stopped. The officer told Register that Crystal was still missing. At 12:43 p.m. on November 17th, Crystal's cousin, Kevin James, telephoned the Registers and told them that Crystal's body had been found on a dirt road in another part of the county. Now, I want to mind you, Kevin James, who is not on trial here, I posted a message and responded to some information that he shared yesterday. And after sharing with him that this was a Freemason satanic ritual, this is identical to it, and sharing with him that, asking him the question on why he lied, which you'll see that in a minute, why he lied on the stand, and then also asking him if he was left-handed, which that will make a big deal in just a minute, he blocked me, completely blocked me, and would not allow me to speak. So anyway, an autopsy revealed that she had been stabbed at least 31 times, had recent vaginal and rectal heterosexual intercourse, probably by 3 people, according to the notes. 3 people. SLED reports say there was no sperm in her mouth. Her throat was slashed from ear to ear. Only her spinal column kept her from being decapitated. And the killers also sliced open her stomach, revealing her intestines, which protruded from the body, and the potassium level is consistent with postmortem interval in the range of 30 hours. The blood was negative for alcohol. According to the interview, she had a couple of beers at a party that night, and according to solicitor Ralph Wilson, a SLED team was called in before the body was sent to Charleston for an autopsy. In other words, there should not have been any of the very little materials left for the pathologist to find, even though he revised his autopsy twice. The body was discovered at 10 a.m. on November 17, 1991 by 2 brothers looking for a place to deer hunt, and they said that they spotted the fresh blood in the roadway and the body in a ditch by the road. More than 100 of Crystal Todd's friends and acquaintances were interviewed by police. All of the interviews were recorded by the police except for one, Ken Register. All of the males interviewed were asked to submit samples of their saliva, blood, and pubic hair for DNA testing. All of the samples were promptly sent to SLED, except for one, Ken Register's. Register's blood was held for 16 days before being sent for testing. Another subject's DNA samples were sent just before Register's. The other subject had a history of violent sexual behavior, including a fetish for anal sex. She was sodomized. The other suspect was also seen burning bloody clothing and boots. Police obtained a search warrant and recovered some bits of the clothing and other items. Tests showed the blood to be human. Where's he? Who is he? And why isn't he in prison? On February 17th, get this, remember that date, February 17th, 1992, Horry County Police Detective Bill Knowles, who is also a Freemason, requested that a warrant be issued for the arrest of Ken Register because the DNA matched with samples taken from Crystal's body. But the DNA testing wasn't done. Remember, SLED only had Ken's blood for 18 days. According to all reports, it takes approximately 4 months to do a DNA test. Preliminary DNA testing was not completed until February 18th, which was the next day. How did Detective Knowles know that the DNA would match several days before the 17th of February? Because they had planned the arrest several days before he asked for the arrest warrant. The arrest warrant, dated February 17th and signed by Detective Knowles and Archie Lee, stated DNA wholly matches, and in every particular match that removed from Todd's body can only be from one source. Registered, then 18, was arrested at about 9 a.m. on February 18, 1992, and charged with the kidnapping, rape, and murder of Crystal Todd. Register vehemently denied all allegations and asked to see his mother several times. He didn't ask to see an attorney. He asked to see his mother. Also, the public defender sent someone around to Ken, and he was asked to leave. SLED agent David Caldwell testified that the February 18, 1992 arrest had been planned for several days. He also testified that they wanted to keep Ken isolated and for him to have no contact with anyone. He was denied permission to see or call his mother and was interrogated without success throughout the morning and early afternoon. Frustrated from their lack of progress, police finally decided to visit Register's parents, Shirley and Kenneth Register. They asked Shirley Register to write her son a note telling him to confess. Shirley Register wrote a note, but not what the police told her to write. Instead, she wrote that she loved him and knew where he was that night, what time he left the track, and what time he arrived home. Ken Register was never given the note. Meanwhile, other officers continued to interrogate the youth. Police told him that they had witnesses who had seen him with Crystal on the night she died. They also told him his family said, "The hell with him," with which both statements were not true. They also told him that if he would cooperate, they would talk with the judge and try to save his life. Bill Knowles later admitted during the trial that he had lied and used trickery in order to get the confession, and he told a national television audience on Inside Edition that not only did he lie, but said he would do it again. Finally, after 4 p.m. that day, police announced that Register had confessed. His Miranda rights were signed at 4:10 p.m. They jailed him at the J. Reuben Long Detention Center. Police said that they had signed a confession. Booking time was 4:35 p.m. Did Ken Register, after 7 hours of intense interrogation by police, calmly sign the confession? The signature on the confession is smooth and neat and obviously a calm person, and signed Johnny Kenneth Register II. The signature on the Miranda rights shows a shaking, obviously nervous person. The signature is simply Ken Register. Shirley Register said that her son never signed his full name. The two papers were signed one behind the other. The confession is a sketchy one-page report typed by police for Register to sign, and it doesn't even say he killed her. According to Professor Richard Offshee of Berkeley, California, the confession is coerced and has no truth in it. When Register was booked at 4:35 p.m., he was so shaken that he did not know his phone number, his address, his weight, or even that his uncle that lived with him for 14 years had died 17 days before his arrest. The booking sheet indicated that Register was very suicidal and requested checks be made on him every 15 minutes. But yet no doctor was called to him, and 2 days after his arrest, they were still trying to give him some medication. It seemed strange, medication prescribed without a doctor. Physical evidence also supports the fact that Ken Register could not have committed this crime. Dr. James Downs, a forensic pathologist who performed the autopsy, testified that the killer was left-handed. Ken Register is right-handed. Tire impressions taken at the scene did not match Ken Register's vehicle. A bloody palm print found on the shoulder of the victim did not match Ken Register. Fingernail scrapings from under fingernails did not match Ken Register. Ken's car matched samples taken, or none of the about 100 swabs and cuttings taken from Ken's car matched samples taken from the victim. 2 loose black curly hair fibers were found in the crease between the victim's thigh and vagina. Dark brown hair was also found in her hand and around a toe of her left foot. They also found it in her hand. The hair did not match Ken Register or the victim. Ken Register's hair was blonde. It was blonder than mine. From the date of the autopsy, November 18, 1991, until just before the trial, January 13th through January 22nd, Dr. Downs estimated that the time of the death to be at about 4 a.m. on November 17th. Citing new evidence, Dr. Downs changed the time of death to between 11:30 and 2 a.m. The so-called new evidence was that Dr. Downs said he only learned just before the trial began that the body had been found in a ditch. Upon cross-examination, however, Dr. Downs admitted that he knew 14 months earlier that the body had been found in a ditch. He actually had written it on the first page of his autopsy report. Dr. Diane Levitt, an expert in DNA testifying for the defense, said there was a discrepancy regarding the results because the sizing sheet and a picture of the computer screen do not match. In other words, there was no way to know if the DNA sample removed from the body was hers or Register's. Dr. Levitt further testified that following FBI protocols, the DNA test on Ken Register actually resulted in a non-match and would exclude him as a perpetrator. Dr. Bruce Ware, a state witness, said he would exclude Register rather than include him on the DNA. And let me just add this. In the trial, they acknowledged that there was so much incest in Horry County that they could not determine the DNA because it was so cross-pollinated. I need you to understand that. There was so much incest in Horry County that they couldn't determine the DNA of a person. And I can tell you about that firsthand. We're not going to talk about that today. Between 10:45 p.m. and 11:30 p.m. on the night of the murder, a gray-haired woman was seen sitting in the victim's car in the driver's seat. A middle-aged man was with her who drove a dark blue older model sedan. A newspaper carrier was nearly run off the road near the murder scene at 4:30 a.m. on November 17th by 2 trucks, a white GMC and a dark Toyota or Nissan. A white truck was observed between 12:45 and 12:50 at the Conway Middle School, where the victim's car was later located. A man approached the victim's car and appeared to open the driver's door. This was between 12:45 and 12:50. We all know that Ken Register got a phone call from Miss Bonnie Faye Todd at 1:32, and he was home by 12:15. Okay, so Dr. Downs also testified. She testified, I heard this, okay, during the trial that the attack took approximately 45 minutes. This meant, according to the confession, that Ken Register had to leave Angela around 11:40 p.m., drive 13.6 miles to the Coastal Mall in Conway, drive 0.8 of a mile to Conway Middle School, drive 5.8 miles to the murder scene, have sex 2 or 3 times and stab her 31 times, and cut her stomach open, drive 17.3 miles to his home, and arrive home around 12:15 with no blood on him, his clothes, or his vehicle. Kevin James, here's his name again, testified that on November 19th, Register had his automobile washed and bought new tires. Receipts later proved that the tires were purchased and the car was washed on December the 19th. not November. Now, here's the thing that I asked the question on. Why did you lie? And Kevin James actually acknowledged that he was the one that changed out the tires because his father owned a body shop and he bought the tires from his father. So let me ask you a question. If you were committing a murder, would you go to Crystal Faye Todd's cousin and her uncle's body shop to have your tires changed? No, you would not. And Kevin James would have known exactly the date that Ken Register would have changed those tires out because he acknowledged yesterday in a message that he changed the tires out himself. Yet the receipts later prove that it was a month later. It was December 19th, not November 19th. And Kevin James also rode in the car the day after. He rode in the car the day after, on November 17th, in this car, in Ken Register's car, and testified that there was nothing in Ken's car out of the ordinary. He testified against that. Tests on both the old and the new cars showed nothing that would implicate Register in this case, and many of these questions were not brought out during the trial. These questions and more have continued to haunt this county of more than 140,000 even after the conviction. The attorneys were trying heavily to try to get an appeal, and the appeal was turned down. He was not allowed to ever get an appeal. He filed an appeal 3 different times and was never allowed. And here's what I want you to understand. The arrest warrant used to arrest Ken was a false warrant because the DNA was not complete. They only had one probe as of 2/18, and the warrant stated that the DNA was complete. And here's what it said in USA Today, according to USA Today on 6/22/94. It said, for the most conclusive test results with DNA comes from 4 or 5 probes. They only had one. And mind you, a day before, there was a warrant signed by a judge saying that the conclusive evidence was there for DNA, yet there was no DNA at that point. So USA Today says, for the most conclusive test results from DNA comes from 4 or 5 probes of the blood's genetic makeup. Each DNA probe takes a week, and it takes 1 to 2 more weeks to analyze the test results, this giving a total of 6 to 12 weeks. Each test rules out by hundreds, then thousands, then millions. You can't do 1 or 2 probes and quit. According to the experts, the evidence from the crime scene should match up with the DNA. Without this link, you have no case. None of the crime scene evidence linked Ken to Crystal Todd, such as the fingerprints, the tire tracks, the footprints, the hair, the fingernail scrapings, the fibers, or other materials that were found on her body. The only thing that they have is a forged confession. Guys, he just turned 18. He was 17 years old when this supposedly happened. This was his best friend. He literally left his girlfriend and supposedly went and tried to murder a person and murdered someone, brutally murdered them. No. In the beginning, they thought this was a satanic ritual. They actually brought it up as a satanic ritual. When the FBI got involved, they said it had to be someone close to her. No, it didn't. No, this was a satanic ritual. This is what they do to you when you tell the truth. So there's a whole lot more to this case that I am not ready to share right now. But we have to do everything in our power to stop this corruption from happening. And it's not just, think of how many people had to be involved. See, we became the silent majority for a reason. You want to know why? Let me just tell you why. We became the silent majority in this country in 1826 when a guy by the name of Captain William Morgan was brutally murdered for exposing Freemasonry for what it was.